Go ahead. Yeah. Okay. All right, we have a clock. Okay. Oh, shoot. I left that clicky thing. So I don't have a clicky thing.
There it is.
Clicky thing. All right. Thank you. Okay. We're going to be really quick. So we're talking about femvertising today, which is a concept we've been banging about. And these are some brands that our national survey, through our national survey, some of our consumers indicated we're doing this well. It's the concept that you can empower girls and women through advertising, and it's something of a trend. I'm sure you guys have seen lots of this through, well, for a while now, through Dove campaigns, but more recently through Under Armour and Nike and Always Like a Girl and Pantene, I'm Sorry campaign. Just lots and lots of, there's been a real spate of these kind of pro-female, pro-fempowerment ad campaigns that have been getting a lot of traction, both with social and with PR in general. And we're going to explore a bit during this 20 minutes what's driving this trend. So we'll start with the F word, just to get the party started, by which we do not mean anything four-lettered. We mean this word, feminism, which is super popular in Utah, I'm told, and and is weirdly controversial lately. But if you read the definition, I'm not sure why, because it's kind of melbatosed. But a recent study showed that a mere 1 in 4 consider themselves feminists. So, but when they read the definition, that jumped. This is from YouGov, that jumped to 60%. So we're hoping that by putting this up there, we might, if 1 in 4 walking in considered themselves feminists, maybe 60% walking out will consider themselves such. But I think it's an important thing to consider in the realm of pro-female messaging and advertising, because it has this concept of femvertising or fempowerment messaging has taken on a really different tone. It's not political. It's not sort of policy or it's not driven by external forces. It feels much more inclusive and supportive lately, and perhaps driven by millennial influences is much more about supporting women and girls and about sort of the softer issues of female empowerment. And so I think it is kind of important to consider the turn in the term. And also that, you know, again, only a mere 14% consider feminism to be a compliment, 26% consider it to be an insult. So it is interesting amid that trend that we're seeing more femvertising or pro-female ad messaging than we've seen since the 70s. So, oh, that's us. And this is Trisha Nichols, who is the head of consumer engagement for Gap. And also the head of digital innovation and also the head of partnerships. She cut her teeth at Pepsi. She's from Texas. She's a badass. So she's had the opportunity to work on some pro-social campaigns herself with Gap. So we're going to talk to her about some of the work she's done. And so we'll kick it off with question number 1. It's not new news, just to tee this up, that women hold the majority of wallet share and control 85% of household purchases and are on track to manage 2/3 of the nation's wealth, according to Forbes, and are really making the majority of not only household decisions, purchase decisions, but really most purchase decisions in general. So this is, again, not new. That flip happened about 10 years ago, but we are seeing a difference in terms of what women maybe want to see in advertising. Maybe that's what's driving it, but wanted to ask you what you think, what factors are contributing to this subtle shift that we're seeing in ad tone.
Sure. So, you know, part of it is I come from a fashion retail brand, so it's easy to say that, you know, women want to hear from us or they want to hear about other women. But I think it goes much deeper than that, and every brand has a possibility here. So the first thing is just insights, and one of the biggest insights we learned is that, you know, a lot of people respond to our images that we put out there in terms of, you know, whether it's a campaign image or it's something else. We realized that they really like to see things that look like content they would take. So first insight was we have a property, it's called Styled By. And Styled By was something that we said, we're just gonna turn it over to other people to style our product. So another insight was women and men too, but men need a little more instruction. Women are a little more aspirational. There's no offense against the men. But from a fashion sense, you know, they don't want to see a brand where you have to dress head to toe in Gap, let's say. They really want to see you show them images. It's just like how the real world works. And the real world works is that you may wear a piece from Gap, but you also may wear an Hermes belt. You may wear, you know, a lot of different things. So we turned over our platform Styled By to content creators, mostly female, that actually style a piece of our product, but may in fact style it with competitor product. And that's the image that they put out. They blog about it. You know, there's a lot of natural reach to that because it's coming through their channels, their voice, their style. So that's the first thing, is just that authentic layer. And the second is storytelling. You know, women are natural storytellers. I heard 2 guys chatting it up on the plane the other day, and I was shocked how long they talked to each other. And I was like, what is going on? You guys aren't girls. But women are natural storytellers, and they like to hear stories, and they want a brand to start telling stories. So we have a deep history of empowering and educating women, and a lot of the storytelling for us has to come through in that respect.
I like that. You guys are girls. That's awesome. Thank you. So that's cool. So it's actually seeing something more authentic, and I think the advent of social probably has driven that ability to self-style and to sort of produce identity. Yeah.
That point, in fact, 70% we saw when we put out a campaign image versus something like our Styled By image, where it's coming from natural content, mostly taken from the iPhone, it's coming through from you know, content creators on our behalf. Those images have a 70% higher engagement for us in social than our campaign images. So just alone, I think social media has driven the desire to see more pro-female messaging, or messaging that's relatable.
Right, relatable, real. It's interesting because it's such a soft difference. It's not like an aggressive difference or an aggressive shift towards combat boots, but it's more of a sort of a subtle shift towards, and that's why it's hard to talk about, because it's kind of like pro-female, and it's not really product-y.
It's just natural.
Yeah, it's a more of a aspirational brand aspirational rather than product-driven shift. So as we move forward, we did a national survey to look at what was driving this shift, and that's what's on the screen behind me. And we saw that 90% of women thought that it was really important that advertisers contend with this issue of sort of the kinds of images they were putting out, and felt that self-esteem and the impact of advertising on girls in particular. There was a big thread of girls, the impact on girls of advertising, which is a long since proven issue that, you know, self-esteem is impacted by advertising, or girls' self-esteem is impacted by advertising. And it's interesting to me that it's popping now. You know, it was proven over 20 years ago. And but anyway, better late than never. And you know, that brands need to be sort of accountable to this, and that our next generation of girls are sort of interest when we contemplate pro-female and female empowerment messaging. So there's a lot of going on around sort of do it for the girls that we saw in our survey work. And then we saw the flip side, of course, this again is an area that's well documented, the negative impact of sort of negative messaging, or messaging that presents unreal images of girls, or sort of dramatically thin models, or unrealistic images of women and girls. We've seen everything from the amount of retouching, you know, 40% plus of 18 to 24-year-olds are retouching images before loading them to social. You know, the number of girls who consider themselves to be not attractive has only increased in recent years. So, and that was the insight that the Dove Real Beauty campaign was founded upon, was this sort of striking number of girls who consider themselves not attractive, and sort of the advent of, or the outcomes that were driven by that feeling of low self-esteem. So we know the flip side, and I think that that's something that a lot of advertisers have been addressing as they contemplate the amount of airwaves we're taking up with our ad messaging, the amount of impressions, and the amount of consciousness we advertisers are using. You know, could we do a little bit of good, or at least do less harm with that time that we're using? So the positive that we've seen, it's true that pro-female messaging not only drives positive propagation among sort of consumers and their social reach, and we've seen really strong pickup. You guys have all read about this and seen it, I'm sure, in your own lives, that women are much more likely to propagate pro-female messaging. Like a Girl is a great example, but there have been strong examples from Nike, from Under Armour, as mentioned, from Goldie Blocks, Tampax. So we've seen the really strong really strong outcomes in terms of marketing propagation, but we've also seen strong outcomes in terms of bottom line, and Dove's increase in market share by over 30%, increase in bottom line by over 30%, Nike's increase in Q4 results when they refocused on females, by over 50%. There's been just really, really great outcomes in terms of bottom line. And that's what's really made it, I think, a more legitimate marketing approach. It's not just that that this approach has been lauded as a strong social propagator, but also that it's driven strong shareholder value. So on this point, Miss Thing, do you think social impact and socially conscious advertising is less of a trend and more of a requirement now that it's been sort of proven as not only a good social decision, but also a good business decision for some brands?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely a requirement. You know, a lot of brands, this is evolving into a reason for being. A lot of brands and companies recognize that, you know, it's how consumers are bonding to them. It's something that will, you know, we know that brands who are very, you know, conscious in the social impact world, this is a way for consumers to really trust them and be bonded to them. And for us, you know, we look at it as the insight of, we want to help people look good, feel good, do good. And the do good aspect of it is really important. And there's a bit of a back to storytelling, you know, some of that will come through there. And for us, one of the things that's in our history, I'll just mention, we have a program called PACE, and it's about the professional advancement, career enhancement for women. So long ago, you know, we've been supporting women for a number of years, and what we realized, we weren't really talking about it. And, you know, part of that is because you want to be authentic, and so you shouldn't just throw it out there to kind of just say, hey, look what we do. And
it feels a little cheesy, or used to, yeah.
Right. So, you know, we started to realize we should tell the story about that, and in fact, create a platform where we could tell the stories that we do, but also that we could tell other people's stories for them. And we created that through a campaign called One Stitch Closer. Mm-hmm. So I do think it is an absolute requirement, but it should be real. And it's the way of doing business these days that is more meaningful for both sides. It's just as great for the brand as it is for consumers to see.
Great. And you saw in our survey results that over 60% of women feel all brands should be integrating pro-female messaging regardless of their brand DNA. Do you agree? That's consumers, so they don't, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd heed a little bit of warning there that it does have to go back to the authenticity piece. And it should be something that you can tell a legitimate story about. The idea that you know, it's really rare that brands aren't doing something really great. It just may be that you're not talking about it, but you have to dig deeper into what it is about your brand. And it's not a campaign. I mean, one thing is you've got to sort of realize this may not be about advertising. This is just about an aspect of your brand to tell a story, because your story can inspire others to do the same thing. So it shouldn't just be a transactional model. It's not just looking for, hey, we should sell more, so we're going to talk about this good stuff we do in the hope that people buy us. It actually should be something where you're inspiring the rest of the world to do what you do. And you know, it is really important, but it's got to be a truly authentic part of your DNA aspect.
And then that's to that point, do you think a brand who employs pro-female messaging, this is the point that has been made, you guys might have seen the Ad Age piece on pink washing. I was calling it femme washing, which everyone told me not to do because that sounds like something else. But do you think a brand who employs pro-female messaging within advertising has an obligation to walk the walk behind the scenes?
Yes. Again, you don't want to do it if it's not real, but you know, brands like us, brands like MasterCard, who spoke earlier, a lot of brands, unless you're a startup and you just started yesterday, and even if you did, you have a choice to turn this now. You have a long, deep history, and I call it the DNA project. So I dug back into the business plan that Don and Doris Fisher wrote about the Gap, other than some funny stories about the fact that we were going to be called Pants and Discs at one point because we sold music and jeans and pants. Luckily, we didn't because we might be irrelevant today. But the story behind the Gap was really interesting. It was based in individualism, optimism, and democracy. But Don and Doris Fisher each put in equal money to start the business. So from the very beginning, it was about wage equality and empowerment for women. And then all along throughout the years, they did stories about supporting women, the education of women, and even supporting women entrepreneurship. So I think that it should be real for you, and if it's not, dig into your history, ask your company, let me read the original business plan, there's probably something there, and look at what else your company is doing. And if you're a startup and just started yesterday, now's the time to set that foot forward, especially wage equality and things that you can support right away.
And wage equality has become such a hot topic now. That's a great one to be able to focus on. I mean, awesome, because now it's extremely topical. Awesome, thank you, babe. So when we move into Femvertising's role in collaboration, which is what this sort of conference and the topic is about, you guys collaborate with a lot of content creators. I won't go into the stats, you guys can read them, but women rule social, they create lots of content, they push lots of content. One of the reasons these types of campaigns have been successful is because women push them and seem to really respond to the emotional component of this type of campaign. So over half of most of the campaigns that we cited in our research, sort of leading up to talking about the Femvertising platform and the way that our company has been recently, over half of the propagation is driven by users. So when you work with female content creators or even content propagators, both producers and promoters, how do you approach that? How do you decide who to work with? How do you motivate them? Content creators.
No one can tell a better story about your brand sometimes than someone else because it seems more real. So when we do work with them, I use the example of Style By earlier. We do say, style our product however you see fit because the world is going to trust that above the other. But we look for women who are interesting, who are entrepreneur in their own right. And we also, one thing that we found is even just talking to them in different ways and in different places, we have moms, we have people that are changing the world for social good. We have people that are fashion inspirationalists. So we use all of those content creators and bring them forward. What we don't do is say, hey, you're popular, we want you on our stuff. What we do say is, do you share our brand values, optimism, individualism, and democracy? So that's a good lens, and your brand should have one to work with content creators.
Okay, great point. So we're just going to keep.
Wanted to jump in so we could open it up for Q&A.
Awesome.
Actually.
Good. Jump right in.
Gotcha.
The next slides are just not that exciting. Let's
so we have a few minutes left, and wanted to see if anyone would like to ask Tricia or Samantha any questions. Anyone? Was that a hand?
Super.
I have a question. How do you find the different creators, the media people that you want to partner with? I mean, what is that kind of selection process like?
Yeah, we have influencer finders that we use, and also we have great relationships with people because our brand has a heritage of social good and music, and so some people naturally are just friends of the brand and that we talk to them. One thing that I wanted to mention is actually the power of social media in this part of it, because we did realize we are a brand about fashion and personal style, but then we also have our kids and baby business, and we have moms. So we actually separated our social channels so that we talk to people, our adult side of our business in this way, and then we talk to moms in a different way. And they may be the same person, but we also thought it was important to separate how we're talking to them and which influencers we bring to the table for both sides of that.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Any questions? Gentleman right here in the front. Hold on, we'll bring you a mic.
You mentioned that it's important as a brand to participate in femvertising in an authentic way. And I'm curious if you're a brand or a company that has a long history, but not necessarily a past of engaging in femvertising and feminist issues, how do you participate in a way that's authentic and meaningful and involve yourself in the conversation in a way that comes across as being authentic?
Yeah. That's where I say I do think it's probably hard to find, it's hard not to find something about your brand that maybe has a special aspect to it, whether it's something that's happening on a social impact way, or if it's something that in your company you're supporting wage equality and you may not even have realized it as much. So those are things that you can tap into. I think in terms of content creators, that's a different level, and you can. One thing about it, that because of the spending power of females and because of the sharing power of females, you do want probably where you can to have the female insight on your business, and that's by pulling in those content creators and telling the stories about your brand you didn't know you had. So it will be a true collaboration. It should be real. You should be sitting down with them, telling them your history, letting them sort out what they think is the most important thing to talk about. Unless you're a brand that just does not care about, a female dollar, which
If you're
Some-
guests,
yeah,
you might want to stay away
right.
from it.
Very few do, but very few don't care about that. So the content creation and collaboration piece should be actually, that's your most fun and real part, the collaboration, and you hear what they think about your brand and they'll pull it forward for you.
Also grabbing onto something topical, like something that She Knows did. We didn't necessarily have a strong history here, but we went with when the bossy controversy came out, around the word bossy. We found a bunch of girls, we didn't put anything on them. We had young girls, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, just talk about the word. So we weren't claiming anything. There was no claim involved there. It was simply creating a forum for young people to talk about something. So I think if you go with, to Trisha's point, creating a forum for women or girls to talk, so you're not making a claim. You're not rolling in hot with like, we are this, but just, again, just enabling.
Right.
I think that's all the time we have. Please give it up
Cool,
for Trisha and
thanks,
Samantha.
guys.